All right, hey everybody, welcome to another GGwow video. We are going to take a look today at all of the DPS specs in Mythic Plus, and we're going to rate them on a tier list, our favorite thing, with the goal of talking about their utility in mind. We're going to talk about how good they are, basically everything that doesn't show up on the damage meter, right? How defensive they are, how much they can survive in keystones, how much value they're adding to the group with all kinds of other things like crowd control, movement type stuff, displacements, any of those sorts of effects are all going to show up here. I've contracted in resident tank expert Dorki. We also have Ellesmere in here as well, resident healing expert. Okay, so we're starting off with DPS specs, and we're going to start off, I guess, just from the top of this list that I have here. We have Affliction Warlock, so let's do the Warlock specs in general. How do you guys feel about the utility of, I guess we've got what? Soulstone, pretty strong. Health stones, I think, are kind of a big deal for keys. One thing I've noticed this season about having the health stones has been it's really noticeable, right? Having the Warlock in the group for that.
Yeah, health stones are really strong.
So wait, so do they also play the slow ring? Is that like staple? I actually don't know too much about Afflocks.
Afflock and keys? I don't think so. Let me go take a look.
Because if they do, I think that is pretty huge utility.
I'll go check the legendaries that both of the Affliction locks this season were using. It looks like generally no on the soul ring or the slow ring. Yeah, the slow ring is a very niche pick.
Okay,
yeah.
If they did, I feel like that would actually be like a lot of value. I think this spec is a little bit worse than Destro specifically. So whatever Destro would be, this would have to be a tiny bit lower.
Yeah, we also have gateways.
Are like very noticeable.
Gateways all around the place as well. That's kind of just general Warlock utility relative to the other classes. Yeah, the three Warlock specs don't really have like that different of utility compared to each other. One thing that's true is like Demo has pet stun, but they like pulling out their imp or whatever is really annoying. So you don't get the spells out of them as much as easily without having to twist their arms.
Yeah, they're like the arcane mages of mages.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. The infernal stuns, how much of that is their set bonus, though? Like, are we factoring in set bonus in this, or are we talking about just, like, the class ignoring the set bonuses?
So. I mean, like, we are playing in this expansion, so, you know, whatever is current.
Okay, so we're talking about the utility of these, you know, specs with their 9.2.5 set bonuses.
Yeah, and covenants and stuff.
And covenants and stuff. All right. I feel like the infernal stuns don't necessarily bring it all the way up an extra tier for Destro, though.
Well, I think it's like definitely better than Demo for sure. So, you know, like let's just rank Destro first since it's the best one, right?
Okay. Yeah. We got to set our baseline here, right? Because we don't have the other specs relative to it yet on this list.
Well, Destro brings a lot more than just like that. Destro lacks a bit in terms of CC utility. They have a very long cooldown for their kick. They only bring Shadow Fury for AoE stun, and outside of that, they don't really have much else. You know, they've got Mortal Coil technically,
Banish and Plaguefall as well.
And Banish, that's the other
one for sure. Yeah,
Banish is very, very good. Most of the utility power from Warlocks this season, from a healer perspective, has come from both their tankiness, survivability, and their dispels. We've seen a lot of bosses in Shadowlands with double magic debuffs.
Yeah, which this is Kultharok and Devos, right?
Yeah, Kultharok and Devos, and also Tazavesh as well.
Yeah.
What's it?
Menagerie.
The Menagerie boss. You know, all those bosses on High Tyrannical were extremely scary when you had to deal with one of those debuffs staying the entire time. And having double dispel really just made those dungeons infinitely easier on Tyrannical weeks. Because, you know, you have your healer dispel and then you have the Warlock dispel. And then on top of that, you have personal survivability, which Warlock's kind of unmatched in terms of their personal survivability. They don't necessarily bring a full immune, but they have a 1 minute cooldown, you know, massive shield for pretty much their whole health pool, and a 40% DR. Doesn't their mastery give shields as well?
Destro does, I think. Yeah.
So like Destro's survivability is absolutely out of this world. I would rank their survivability top tier. In terms of their outside of that utility, I'd probably rank that closer to like an A tier rather than S. But then they, you know,
honestly, I feel like it's an S after you said all that. The fact that they bring so much survivability, and then on top of like, you know, multiple AoE stuns. And by the way, Infernal Stun doesn't DR. That's like something really
that's a
crazy
big one for sure.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Gateway allows for some interesting skips. And then you also have Healthstones, which is group survivability. So between all of that, I would probably put Destro at an S as well.
So I like the argument, like definitely given that we're factoring defensive power into this, yeah, Warlock is pretty unmatched up there. I do think we got to be careful to not get too fixated on like what the current season good stuff is, right? Like, yeah, Warlock does really well on these metrics, but it's not like Warlock was being brought before it was doing like ungodly damage, right? When it had a lot of this same stuff in its kit, right? Yeah. Whereas there have been some specs that have been brought even when they've been doing very low damage relative to the others. But I don't think Destro, like I don't think you'd be bringing Destro to keys if it was doing mid damage. So to me, I feel like Destro, like if we're actually just looking at the utility, like the non-survivability utility part of stuff, I think that they're kind of middle of the pack compared to a lot of these other specs. Like, yeah, if you list out all the things, niche. It seems like there's a lot, but all the specs have a lot of stuff like that. So I kind of want to put like Destro and A for like bring them up to A because of how tanky they are. But I don't think they get all the way into S on just on the utility side of things.
Like a very high A for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think I'm down for maybe demo in B and F in either A or B, right in the middle line.
B for sure.
Yeah, probably still B. Yeah.
Okay, so we like Destro better, not just because it does more damage this season, but because it's tankier off of the mastery. It has the infernal stuns, and it has. What was the other thing that Destro had that the others didn't? Oh, you had Imp Dispel that Demo doesn't. Yeah, a couple of nice little benefits there. All right, mages.
Ooh, this is a good one.
So the mage, I think the three specs of mage, it's interesting because they all have pretty different defensive kits. Fire and Frost have really strong defenses compared to Arcane, right? Fire's got Caught, Frost has got double ice block, and then Arcane is sitting out here with nothing of the sort, right? Yeah.
Greater Invis is definitely like something that they have over the other ones, but it's not as good.
Yeah.
Like here's how I've always put the mages. Whenever Fire and Frost exist, there's very little reason to play Arcane unless Arcane is like, clearly better in damage. Because also they don't bring anything in terms of like CCs and stuff. Like you look at Fire Mage, they have a 20-second DB that is like insane. There's no class that has a 20-second AoE stop. And you have Frost Mage that has permaslow. I think permaslow is like super big. So whatever Fire and Frost is, I think Arcane deserves one lower. Just like how the demo is at the moment. So
the question is, when we're looking at this utility kit, right, we're talking about a spec or a class with an immunity. All three of these have that immunity. They've got Poly, right? They can blink around. They got Spell Steal. They've got Curse Dispel. There's a lot of stuff here that sounds like utility to me.
Alter. Yep. Yeah,
Alter. I kind of feel like maybe Frost and Fire in A and Arcane in B would be warranted here. I'm a little bit worried that we're going to end up with a very heavy SA and B tier by doing it this way, but I don't know. I feel like
I would argue that Arcane should be even lower. I don't know. Arcane is
a niche. I mean, okay, that's like the part because they do have like that ability to spam spell steal. I think that's the one thing it has going for it. So
true.
Yeah, but like
that really comes up though when we're comparing to DB or the permaslow. I mean, those are so good, right?
Would we put it 2 tiers below Orville?
Well, it depends. Where would we put Fire and Frost? I mean,
I think they belong in S personally.
Yeah, I mean, survivability wise, they're an S. At least Fire and Frost are. And in terms of like other utility, it kind of depends on the rest of your group comp, right? Because they have a lot of things that aren't super unique to them. In terms of like Curse Dispel, Purges, stuff like that a healer would normally bring. The one big unique thing that they bring for, I would argue, is Fire bringing the 20-second AoE stop, which, like Dorki said, is insane. It's always been massive to have that. And then Arcane Intellect. Those are like the two really unique things, utility-wise, that I think Fire Mage specifically brings. Frost Mage, I agree the slow is really good, but depending on the tank meta, is not always like relevant, and also dependent on your group comp, right? Because you might just have natural slows already, since a lot of specs bring slows.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the kit that does like DR, right, with other effects.
And then like, you know, if you have a meta like this season where Blood Decay is super meta and they basically never kite, then slows are less relevant in a lot of situations. And even sometimes can be troll, like on Sanguine Weeks, it's actually oftentimes bad to have the built-in slow in your kit that you can't turn off. I would argue that Fire Mage is better than Frost Mage. So I would put Fire Mage in S, I'd put Frost Mage in A, and I'd put Arcane in B.
I feel like for B, it's sort of the opposite just because I play tank. I definitely value the Frost a little bit more than the Fire. Yeah, I think
it's tough because like it does depend on the meta, right? Like if we're talking about like season 1 meta where you're just perma kiting, like it's so
even
nice.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I said it's really highly dependent on like the meta and your group comp, right? This season, I would argue that Fire Mage is much better utility wise. But if you had asked me last season or season 1, for sure I would put Frost in the same, if not higher.
That's very true.
Because the slow was so relevant. So it kind of depends on which tier we're making this for.
I mean, I guess either way, they're like roughly A and S. I think it's pretty fair to put them both in S because like the way I see it is if every DPS was even, you almost always have a mage in your group.
Yeah, that's true.
Would you guys
the
agree
spammable polymorph is super strong too. Has a lot of uses.
I'm definitely down for one or both of these specs to be an S, and I do think Arcane should be B or C probably.
I would put it in B.
All right, I'm down for this. Fine. Yeah, I'm happy to.
Down for double S or SA. However you guys want to put it.
Ellesmere, I'll let you make the final call on the mage if you want to stick with your S Fire, A Frost, or if you want to go to double S.
Let's just go double S because it will make this more relevant for if the tank meta changes.
Okay, so and we're also making a decision that we're talking about this kind of tank meta agnostic then, just like in across all seasons if we put these specs in there with their current kit. So doing a little bit of hand waving, but that's how it goes. Let's talk about warriors next. When you think about a M+ utility suite, warrior hasn't really shown up for utility in M+ kind of ever. We saw a little bit of arms in Legion because they did a lot of damage, and then we haven't really seen a lot of warrior in M+ as like a meta spec kind of ever since the old arms Umbral Moonglaves days.
And there's a reason for that outside of just lack of damage, because some seasons you'll actually see that like warriors are popping off in terms of actual damage done in keys. But like you guys were saying, like their utility is just pretty bad. In Shadowlands, they did get Spear of Bastion for Kyrians, which is like good for mob grouping a bit. But I don't know. In general,
it's nothing too big.
They really just don't bring that much. They have their AoE stun. And
no, they don't have what AoE stun. They don't even have any AoE stun.
Oh wait, yeah, that's right. That's only,
that's
right?
completely gone. Yeah.
There's Ancient Aftershock. If you go,
is that played?
Arms can play it, but it's not good. It's not good to Kyrian.
And it's not even actually reliable because isn't it kind of like RNG whether or not they get stunned within a certain?
I think it just goes every certain amount of seconds. It does knock like everything.
Oh, okay.
It's like better than Earthquake at that.
So some other defensive capabilities first, because I'm not too sure. I don't remember exactly what they have. So arms, they only have Die by the Sword, right? And they can play.
Do they not have Spell Reflect?
So they both have Reflect this expansion.
They have this, right?
Okay.
But so our arms gets to parry, whereas Fury gets a little bit more passive healing and DR, and they also get Enraged Regen, which is going to let them heal for like a full health bar over its duration. Right? Yeah, so I would say generally Fury is more durable, but Arms gets to parry taunt or parry intervene, and both of those are pretty potent in certain cases.
I think
Fury
Warriors
does not have parry.
I think Warriors' two like big, utility unique things that they bring has to be
shouts, right?
Battle Shout, and Rallying Cry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Rally is actually is quite good. Especially with the
Rally
conduit dispatch, like you've got it
Isn't
up
it
to
like a 3-minute cooldown, I think.
It is a 3-minute cooldown, but I mean, so is Devotion Aura, right? But people still value that a huge amount. Yeah, and I'd argue Rally is often better than Devo.
It's definitely something. Looking at the totality of the kits that other specs have, though, right? Like you're talking about, you got like AoE Fear, although even that's like target capped.
What's the target cap? Is it 5?
Yeah.
Same as priest.
Ouch.
It's tremendous pain as well because the primary target doesn't move, but so if you want to use it to like get a mob to move, you have to fear a different target and hope that it hits the one that you're trying to get to move. It's
you can also you can intervene someone for eating a bullet, but I mean, there's not a whole lot of situations where that's good. I'd argue it's good on prod, but like since we're talking about DPS at the moment, I think it's like pretty whatever.
I kind of feel like these are C's, but maybe we even want to put them in D to if we want to have a D tier.
Just because I feel like there are definitely specs that are better than them.
Yeah, are there specs that are worse on utility?
Yeah,
I think they're pretty much bottom of the barrel.
All right, well, we'll put them in D then. Definitely something.
It's like Ellesmere said.
It's possible that like in a meta where you're super heavy, like entire group physical damage, that Battle Shout would really get them over that hurdle, but I mean that's not really what we're discussing.
Yeah, that's super niche. I feel like because like it could be nice, but that's like a very specific comp, and you would only be there for the Battle Shout, really. And then that's like
exactly.
That's like their primarily utility, it feels like.
Right, or you're playing them because they do a lot of damage, which is what this tier list is trying to factor out.
I mean, we've seen them in really high damage metas, but even then, you didn't really want them. Like in Season 2 BFA, for example, I think I would argue they were top damage.
Well, Fury was capped there, but Arms is doing a lot of damage, Yeah,
I mean, even Fury, though. Like, I remember Trance's girlfriend was playing Fury, and she was just beating everyone in damage. Even
I remember.
Yeah.
Although, you remember that, right?
Except for do you guys remember the Toltagor first pull where you had like 40 mobs and Fury? It was tremendous pain. Yeah. I'm down for this. Like I'm down for saying Warrior utility is bottom of the barrel for sure. Especially if we factored in the fact that like the way their damage profile works, if they are doing a lot of damage, then you have threat problems too. And that's like
I don't think we should start factoring in.
I mean, okay, that's
that would make it even worse for them. All right, let's do Rogue though. Let's talk about when we're talking about a class that when I was envisioning what the S tier would look like. Yeah, it has to be Rogue, right? Like looking historically.
Just lob it all in S.
If you look back, right, it's like.
Hold on. Before we put it all in S, so I feel like Assassination has like a bit of a like you would rather have an outlaw and a sub. I feel like. Because like, so what does Assassination bring? Yeah, I mean, it brings Garrote Silence, but at the same time, it's that pain of an ass class that you always have to play with. That always has to re-stealth and always has to waste their vanish. And what else was there? Like they can't play one of the poisons, right? I think it was a wound poison.
Which
they can't
poison?
play. No, not wound poison. Because they share one of the poisons, right? I think it was mind numbing that shares with their instant poison or something.
I think it is wound poison that they give up for more. Like that's a damage loss for them. More, I'm not 100% sure though. Actually,
maybe this was back in BFA, but I swear they couldn't have played one of the poisons that whatever was slow or mind numbing.
Huh? Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong about this. I actually don't really know.
Yeah, I haven't played Rogue too much this expansion.
Yeah, every time I play with Assassination or Rogue, I just know it's not as great of an experience as Outlaw or Sub. Outlaw having longer arms and Sub having Gouge. Oh yeah, Gouge too, and Sub having all those dances. I feel like those are.
See, I would definitely agree with that, and I would say that I would put the other two in a tier above Sin. But if you just look at Sin's kit, not relative to the other two Rogue specs, would you still not put that in S tier?
I feel like we should factor that though, sort of how we factor in Warlocks.
Yeah, I'm down for like I do agree that Sin is like assuming all the three specs were exactly identical in damage, you would probably go. I think the Outlaw would be the best, and then Sub would be second, and Sin would be third.
Yeah,
in
Outlaw
terms of
would definitely be best.
The value they're bringing. The question is is it a full tier's worth of difference in their utility? And if so, is it the difference between S and A, or is the difference between S and S plus or something? Do we need another tier up above S for Outlaw or something like that?
I would argue Sin is close to Destro, maybe above Destro. How about that?
I mean, what does Sin bring? Right, they bring tricks, sap, blinds, shroud,
kidney, cheap,
unkillable too.
Kidney, cheap,
evasion, cloak, vanish.
Yep.
Distract.
Well, I wouldn't say vanish because they need their vanish.
Yeah, their vanish is more of a damage thing than
sure, but they still have stealth. So
and you still
counts for something.
Whenever you need vanish, at least back in BFA, whenever you needed vanish something, you could just hold it. It was not the end of the world.
Yeah.
no, it was surely the end of the world.
You would complain about it for sure. Cheat death as well, if we haven't mentioned.
Cheat death for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When you list out a kit like that, there's no world in which I don't put that in S tier. Even if Outlaw slightly brings a little bit more.
Yeah, I haven't really been like doing these tiers, like within the tiers, I haven't really been shuffling things around too much, but I'm down for like Outlaw is the very top of S tier and Sin not at the top of S tier.
If we want to like shuffle
if we were doing that, it could be something like...
I'm down for that too. Yeah, because like, whenever I look at
like
Outlaw
this or whatever.
and Sub, I'm like, man, V-specs are broken as hell.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I'm definitely not down to put Sin below any other, like if there are non-rogue specs above it, I have a problem. Those where I'm at.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, how about Druid? Now, Balanced Druid in particular is one that we've described. Like, this is a spec that has been sort of a utility bot in some seasons, right? There were some seasons in BFA where it's like, oh, this thing's got trees, innervate, beam, typhoon, vortex now, right? Like, you've got a tremendous amount of utility. You've got tankiness, right? You can bear form and live almost anything in M+.
Easily, yes.
Yeah, there's no world in which I don't put that in that.
I think the trees value as well. When you're talking about, like, when you think about low level, like weekly 15 keys, if you played with boomkins, there's a chance they're not even talenting that thing. But once you start like pushing keys, the value of trees in a lot of seasons, not so much this season, but in earlier seasons, this expansion is
even this season, to be honest, bro, trees are so broken. I can't even go into like words about how broken it is. It's on a 1 minute cooldown. It lasts like 10 seconds, I believe it was. Yeah, it was 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And it basically makes your tank immune to damage and immune to a bunch of stuff too. Like
if Boomy actually did real damage this season, like I guarantee Blood DKs would be rejoicing.
Oh yeah, I would feel so good.
The gaps in your mitigation as Blood DK when your Dancing Room weapon is down can be very scary. And to have something to like bridge that gap where you're just immune for like 10 seconds is, absolutely massive.
Yeah, and then we're also talking about having mass root available if needed. Cyclone.
Don't forget heart healing too.
Yeah, heart
healing was huge.
Imagine that right now in like Sanguine Depths. That would be so good.
Yeah. Huge utility kit. Okay.
Battle res too, since we didn't mention battle.
And Curse the Spell. Yeah, there's a lot of
and
stuff
Curse.
there.
Yeah,
I feel like they belong higher than some of these specs.
Yeah, I don't really want to like keep
good.
shuffling around the tiers too. Like I don't want to do precise placement. That was just to illustrate a point earlier. But yeah, somewhere up in S for sure.
There's a reason they're always popular in M+.
Yeah, and then Feral Druid on the other hand, the other Druid DPS spec, we're talking about losing Beam for a shorter kick, but losing Beam, which is almost always the more valuable M+ effect, right? We're talking about losing trees. We're talking about losing Innervate. We're talking about going into melee range.
You lose Earth Souls too, right?
So you can take Vortex or Typhoon.
There is no world where you play. Yeah, you 100% only get Typhoon, so you also lose that.
Yeah, you have to take Typhoon if you want. Yeah, because Typhoon is the one on Balance Affinity, which is a DPS increase for Feral. It makes their abilities longer range, and it lets them shift into Moonkin form, a form that does more damage than Cat form.
They do gain Survival Instincts and Stun.
Yeah, Skullbat or Maim, yeah. And you've got free regrowths as well that you can toss out for some...
Is Survival Instinct still like 2 charges?
Yeah.
I think it's 1 now for them, isn't it? I actually don't remember.
Oh, I thought it was 2. It's at least 2 for Bear. I don't know if it is for Feral.
Yeah, it's 2 for Bear.
Well, yeah, I know Bear. I was
don't remember if they have 2 charges still because they gained Bark Skin.
Huh, okay.
I think it might be 1, but I don't actually know too much.
But yeah, SI is crazy. I think Feral is probably A tier.
I feel like the loss of trees in particular is like a lot of the value down. Yeah. I was thinking more B for this, but
I was thinking more B too because it's like a lot of the utility they have is not as valuable now. Like the decurse,
and it's not as unique. Like
the decurse, a lot of specs already bring that. B-res, a lot of specs already bring that.
Stampeding Roar, both like Moonkins have that now as well. It used to be just a Feral only thing.
So they definitely lost a lot of niche utility. I mean, it's just more like standard utility you have now. So
I am worried though. Like one thing that just kind of like viscerally when I see Feral, it's like that. Oh, this is kind of a single target spec, right? It doesn't really scale in 10+ all that well, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm not factoring that in.
A lot of you have to think like, what if they actually did like good
so
AoE?
I do kind of like I could see it being a Ellesmere, on utility and defense.
I think B is fair though because like you guys mentioned, they do have a lot of utility, but a lot of it isn't unique, which is what we're bringing a lot of these classes up to the S tier or above because of their unique utility. And Feral Druid specifically just brings a lot of generic utility, which is good, but I would probably agree with you guys that B is the right tier for them.
Okay, it is settled then. We'll move on to Hunter, which, like Druid, has some melee and some range specs. The utility between the 3 Hunter specs is largely similar. A lot of the big punch is Binding Shot, IMO. Also the immunity,
which is criminally underused.
Yeah, Binding Shot is broken beyond belief. Yeah, that ability is so good.
Too many people underrate that, and it's non-DRable and is essentially like it's 8 seconds or is it 6?
Yeah,
groups up mobs so well 6.
Yeah, insane grouping of mobs and allows your tank to kite if needed. I don't know. It's just so strong.
Yeah, you also have an immunity and you have freezing trap. But if we're going to give some specs points for defensive good, I think we do have to take some points away from Hunter for being the first spec to die as the key level goes up to any ability that does damage to the whole group, right?
So actually, I want to talk about this a little bit. Like, do you guys really think it's that true? I know everyone was always like, there's no way Survival's going to be able to do high keys this season, right?
Yeah, but so Serve gets the leech from their pet, right? They play the Ferocity pet, and they...
Yeah, what do they gain over each other? I want to talk about that first.
So
I don't even know the big
BM doesn't have that leech. Well, they could, but the problem is their pet's doing the damage, not them, so they don't do all that much damage sourced from themselves. So they don't leech themselves that much. MM isn't playing a pet, or if they are, they're complaining about it a little bit, but they'll pull it out to Lust or whatever. So
what about like defensive? Do they have any other defensive differences?
They don't, as far as I'm aware.
Doesn't BM Hunter have like some like Spirit Bond or something? I don't even remember.
Yeah, you could have a pet that casts Spirit Mend.
But if you do that, don't you lose your Survival of the Fittest pet?
I think that it can have both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just like the exotic pet family ability.
Oh, gotcha.
But it's pretty minor amount of healing. I would say, like, I think MM is like the fact that pets are annoying for MM is a little bit of a downer for them. But I don't really think anything between the 3 specs really separates them. If anything, like this season, the survival leech thing has been something I've noticed, but that is also something that is scaling with just how much damage they're doing too.
Yeah, as a healer, you definitely always prioritize hunters. So like, even if you're not seeing them die as much, the healer does have to put more focus into them than the other specs, which is fine because we're in a meta where warlocks just don't take damage, you know?
Well, generally you always have like 2 unkillable classes anyways.
Yeah.
I feel like NM Plus is always
I think that's true. But I would say that hunter survivability is like, it's not as bad as people say, mostly because of conduits this season, right? Because the Feign conduit is super strong in terms of like always having a DR for every damage event, kind of like priests have Fade. So there is something to be said for that. And then, you know, like Dratnos was saying, the leech is actually relevant for survival hunters. Survival definitely has the best utility or defensive power out of the 3 this season, but I would rank them in terms of defensive power. I would rank them pretty low on the list.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to be the worst class for this.
Yeah, and even their immunity is so bad. Like,
yeah, there's some stuff that just it owns you through it.
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely not great. I would say it's better than Warriors for sure, though. I don't think.
Yeah, well, so like defensively, I think Warriors are better at living, especially Fury Warriors than.
You think so? I think it would be Hunters.
No, like, but they also bring Rallying Cry. I don't know.
I meant like individually, like aside from Rallying
Cry. Like defensive.
Counts it as a defensive.
I do think just like if we're factoring in utilities, but I kind of want to put like the Hunters in C, maybe higher because Binding Shot's so good. But I don't know how to correctly penalize the.
I feel like it's minimum B, possibly A.
I think
I feel like Binding is just really high up there.
I think Frost Trap is good. You know, you've got Misdirect, which has its niche uses.
Oh, actually,
Soothe, Feign, Camo. Yeah.
Soothe is definitely good.
All right, I could be sold on B. For
I think
Feign also has a lot of unique uses in dungeons that can mitigate entire boss mechanics. You know, like in Sanguine Depths, for example. On the second boss, the way you can just feign each one of the manifestation, or not the manifestation, castigates. Yeah, it has the ability to like drop stacks on angels and spires, things like that. Like Feign is actually pretty strong defensively if you use it well.
Yeah, it's kind of like Vanish and Spell Reflect, where it's like, oh, the people that know all of the interactions that this is good against, like, kind of just destroy 20% of dungeon mechanics randomly. Dorki, you're saying, yeah, MD really good, especially if threat's going to continue to be
like,
pain.
if it's going to continue being this way, I actually feel like I completely forgot about MD, and now that you guys brought it up, I think it definitely goes into A.
So
but isn't like MD only relevant for? Isn't MD only powerful for like survival though?
And right? MM, yeah, it's
and MM, just not BM.
Because MD is worse.
They changed it. They changed it.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Did they?
Yeah. They changed it at some point. I think it was Shadowlands.
Poggers.
Yeah, I know you guys were talking about like back in BFA whenever they would MD it.
It was so bad. 2 threat to you, because all the damage is coming from their pets.
Yeah, it's actually relevant now. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still hard pressed on putting it on A.
I don't want to. Yeah, I feel like you can't put a spec this squishy in A. Like if we just go back to the idea of like a world where all classes are doing the same damage, I think it's really hard to imagine that you're building comps with like Hunter, especially like multiple of them, right? Like I feel like that's such a liability for living hard bosses.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I don't see their defensive being as weak. I mean, I'm fine for like a really high B too, because I just feel like Binding and MD alone are actually...
Binding is uniquely powerful.
I feel like those two are on the same level as all the S tiers. In terms of, like what they bring. I think that is like if we had to rank like top 5 Mythic Plus abilities, which maybe we'll make that video at some point, but like Binding is definitely in there with like, trees and Shroud and stuff, right? Like yeah.
Is there anything else unique that survival brings that BM and Marksman don't?
Harpoon roots.
A shorter kick, actually.
Yeah, muzzle kick.
Is it a shorter kick? How much?
It's 15 versus 24.
Yeah, it's a melee versus range, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. I would probably put survival in A and the other 2 in B. Because survival, between the melee kick plus the increased survivability from leech, which is actually very relevant.
Yeah, we had a long argument before we started recording about whether we wanted to factor in if a spec was melee versus ranged as like minus points if you have to be in melee.
To be fair,
but the thing about survival is, they don't even have to be. Yeah, you can just aspect of the eagle too, which definitely has got to count as a little bit of extra oomph because they kind of get the best of both worlds. They're and BM as well. Like when we talk about the downsides of being ranged, it's having to stand still and cast, and BM doesn't have to do that. So I think I could be sold on survival A. I don't know. I'm a little bit worried that this is again the kind of like it's good this season bias, because if you look back, over all the seasons that aren't this one, like survival was not.
But I think the reason,
but it was.
I think we were both about to say the same thing, which is that its utility was always good, and the only reason it wasn't brought, like so much of the meta is determined not by utility, but by just raw throughput. In terms of like, you generally have 1 or 2 of the utility specs, right? And then you have your throughput spec. So you always have like a rogue / mage / this season I'd say is probably one of the most unique ones in terms of not having a rogue or a mage in the meta. Have we had that in any of the past seasons?
Not since Legion.
Yeah.
Well, we've had no mage, but
but not like both rogue and mage,
but not
being
both,
absent at the same time. It's never happened since then, since Quad Windwalker days or whatever.
Yeah. So I'd say this season's somewhat of an outlier in terms of comps, simply because, and I'd say the core reason that this season has been an outlier has been because of
the damage,
just how much damage the difference is between those 2 top specs and everything else.
I still want to put Serve in B as well. I do think that, like, if you're thinking about like a season where you're bringing specs for their utility, I don't think Serve is spec
really high B.
Yeah, I'm down for saying better than MM and BM on this metric by quite a bit, but I don't know if I want to bring it up to Destro. If you guys both want to, though, I'm down.
Okay.
If both, like, would both of you prefer an A? Dorki, where would you put it if you were putting it?
I still think it's A.
Ellesmere?
Personally.
I still think it's A.
All right, then A it is. We have the will of the council. All right, Shaman, DPS Shaman, the last in a row of 3 classes that have melee and ranged DPS specs.
Ellie's actually really good.
Yeah. So the shared utility here, we've got like Astral Shift. And then Elemental has Thunderstorm, and it has better Earth that, like, if they're playing Primal Ellie, they get to have control over their Elemental in a way that Enhancement doesn't, which is nice. And it comes with a shield wall too, which is also nice. Although with this season with the set bonus, yeah, you don't really get to have it out for too long. Ancestral Guidance, a good point. Yeah, it's potent, especially like in AoE pulls, right?
Oh yeah, AG is more than potent. It is broken.
Yeah,
and we're the only shamans that play Night Fae, right?
Enhancement can, but I think that's a raid thing. Yeah, I think in M+ they play Venthyr. Let me go look.
You sounded really confident about that.
They actually Enhancement plays Necrolord most often, and then Venthyr.
Wow, I haven't played with Enhance in a while.
Yeah. Probably the Legendary being the reason for that, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
So they bring like a decent bit over them.
Yes.
I'd argue the off-healing power of Elemental Shaman is unrivaled in terms of like the other specs, outside of maybe Boomkin with Heart of the Wild. Like the off-healing that Ellie Shaman brings is staggering. You know, even in Ashen Hollow's heyday, a pull like a shard pull, for example, you know, when we were doing MDI practice, we practiced doing 4 DPS with an Ellie Shaman instead of a healer in halls. The healing that you would do during AG would be more in that 10-second window. Like it would almost double Ashen Hollow's entire healing back when Ashen Hollow was OP. So AG is super, super strong if you use it at the right time. And Fate Transfusion is really, really good as well for just raw healing. There's definitely something to be said for their off healing.
Yeah. I don't know. When you think about like a total utility suite, though, when we compare them to these other classes, I feel like Shaman often gets called like a low utility class. And I think that is fair when we're looking at like all the stuff these other ones are bringing, especially like it's a spec with a nice short cooldown on its shield wall, but it's not like it's not got an immunity. I guess it has Ankh if you want to count that, which kind of does count as an immunity once per dungeon.
The way I've kind of always thought of Shaman utility is kind of like jack of all trades, master of none. You know, like it brings a lot of different types of utility between Cap Totem and all of its totems. You know, it's got slows, it's got an awkward type of trees with Earth Ellie. It's got, you know, the off healing, like I mentioned. It brings a lot. It's got purges. It's got single target slows, spammable frost shock. It brings decurse. It has a lot of different utility. But in my opinion, none of it's super unique or like something that I'd consider to be like very important to pushing keys or to Mythic Plus in general.
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those where it's like it's when you have all these stuff, it's really strong and really nice to have because it's also like a very tanky class. Like not only does it have a shield, but it also has like 2 really pretty big walls.
Well, you have Astral Shift and you have what, Earth Ellie Wall if you're an elemental. Yeah, you don't have Earth Ellie Wall if you're an Enhancement Shaman though.
Yeah, okay, but I mean, Enhance I do think for sure belongs lower than.
So what are we thinking here? 100%. Like Enhance C, Ellie, B, or A type thing?
I think Ellie's A for sure. Like after playing with it, I remember when like first time playing with it in season 1, I was like, holy hell, this class is actually so nice to have.
Are we down for Enhance C?
Is actually pretty big. Yeah, I'm down for Enhance C.
Okay, good. We finally have a member of our C tier.
You just wanted to put one there.
It was looking bad. Let's do DPS Death Knight, which, Dorki, I know you are a personal lover of the Death Knight.
Bad. I feel like they bring nothing really. I mean,
Death Grip, AMZ.
Yeah, some stops. AMZ is like really the shining point, but at the same time, it's like you only AMZ for like half of the mechanics in the game, like not even half. Like a very small portion of the actual mechanics. So
Control like Undead. Frost has that. Unholy, not as much.
Yeah. What else is there? Like some crappy single target stuns.
Does Frost have that disorient thing? Yeah, Blinding Sleet. Yeah.
And that's on a minute cooldown. It's a minute long DB basically.
Very cool. Still pretty good, but
yeah.
I
would put him right along with Warriors. That's how I see it.
If we're factoring in Necrolord, there's grippy hands. If you want,
I feel like that's a liability more than it's.
Yeah, and also like you can just play Fae if you're Frost or whatever, anyways, and it's kind of more damn. I'm down for I'm down for D for DPS DKs as well. Because like if you think about when they're brought, it's sort of a similar thing to Warriors, where it's like, oh, we're bringing Unholy this season because it deals infinite damage, right? But we're never bringing it for utility.
Yeah, like
we're always covering for it. It is a fairly tanky spec, right? Like you spam Death Strikes and you can live a lot.
For sure.
Yeah,
I think it's for sure tankier than maybe even C. Now that I think about it,
yeah,
Strike is broken as hell.
Yeah,
them being a plate class.
Yeah, true. Plate class. There's a lot of stuff that just hits you in the armor.
Yeah, like maybe better than Warriors. Like I don't think they're as bad as Warriors. Like I just remember back in BFA when I played DK a lot, I would always do more damage than rogues or the hunters and stuff. But like, come on, man, who wants to play with a DK? It just always felt so bad having a DK in your group. You just miss all that extra utility.
Yeah, I'm down for either C or D, whatever you guys want for this. I could see that either way.
I'm gonna defer to Dorki on this one because I haven't played with Death Knights much outside of Blood DK.
Yeah, I'm fine for either C or like top of D tier with Warriors at the bottom. Like either of those feel the same. So whatever. I'll just put them in C for now. Havoc Demon Hunter. Now we've got a spec here that's bringing Chaos Brand, which it's technically damage, but it's like a constant thing that they're always bringing that's not their damage, right? It's like everybody else. Well, some of it is, but it's like the rest of the group's damage. So I think that factors in as something that like doesn't show up on their details that makes them better. This is also a spec that it's less tanky than it was in BFA and Legion, but it is still a durable spec against a lot of incoming M+ damage, right? Especially the magic kind.
And Darkness is still a really good defensive button.
Yeah, survivability wise, Demon Hunter is definitely S tier, I would say. Although they're not quite what they were in BFA in terms of like Blade Dance.
Oh god, dude, I miss it so much. Blade Dance dodge is so cool. That was so fun in M+.
Would you guys have said they were like, the best before? Like by far the tankiest spec.
Yeah, I would have them up there. Probably above Warlock. Probably. Yeah, maybe. I mean, Rogue had some. So. Like Rogue could live maybe more casts of a thing on them.
Rogue, but sometimes it was like they would just sort of rot. Whereas
whereas DH never rots.
That class was just like like you don't even have to put a heal on that class. It just lives on its own.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're up there with like Warlock and Rogue and Mage in defense right now for sure. The utility that they're bringing compared to those specs is certainly a cut below, right? Like it's like magic damage, imprison, AoE stun, but not really any other stuff, right?
I do think they're brought for one really big thing though still is Chaos Brand. I like Chaos Brand is unique to them, and it's
and there are a lot of seasons where it makes your whole group do more damage.
Yeah, like by a lot actually.
And I'd still argue Darkness is very good. It's unique to them, but it's very, very, very strong in terms of survivability for your group.
Yeah, against against bosses that do like many medium-sized ticks of damage to the group, right? Like Sanguine Depths bosses. Yeah.
Well, but those are also like the hardest bosses, right?
Right. So. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I'd be down for like an A overall on Havoc. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, it'd probably be like right there with Destro.
Yeah. Again, not consistent. I haven't been consistently moving specs within the tiers, but I'll do that this time as I drop it in right up there next to Destro for sure. Okay, last couple of ones we got here. We've got 3 classes that just have 1 DPS spec. We've got Retribution Paladin. Now, people talk about Paladins as utility.
Wait, hold on. Let me just drop it.
Go for it.
It's an S tier.
Okay.
It's an easy S tier. It's so good.
My only question is, do you insta put that in S tier because of dungeon design in Shadowlands?
No. I think it's just the utility if you bring nowadays is absurd. Like the DPS having sack, all the blessings are insane. I mean, I guess that's sort of true. It is sort of like relevant to this.
Yeah, like the amount of stuff you can freedom and bop profitably.
Yeah, and like disease dispels are just like OP as hell, and like the amount of off healing it does. But like even then, I think whatever they have is just ridiculously good utility. And they're like pretty tanky too. It's not like crazy.
They're very tanky.
But I would say they're
Yeah, they've got bubble, and if they're playing defensively and they're Word of Glorying themselves,
Yeah, and they have
and then they've got the shield,
and they have shield of vengeance,
and sack also as an external for other players on your team, which is really strong.
And Devo Aura passive as well.
Yeah,
like if this class ever did good damage, I feel like it's an easy S tier. That's all. They're like boomkins to me.
Yeah, but that's also assuming that Holy Pally isn't meta.
I would be down to play 2 paladins, to be honest.
You're gonna lose me in that argument for sure.
Think about it this way: like, say you're doing Sanguine Depths, right? You're doing like first boss, you can just like bubble sack one of them. You can you have crazy off healing, so you can like literally top anyone every single time. And like even like second boss or like first boss too, like you can just bop someone and then you bop the other person afterwards.
True.
Having like an extra.
They both have lay on hands.
Like even without lay on hands, you can instant top someone with just like a really big Word of Glory.
Their off healing is really strong if they opt to it. The difference between their off healing and Ellie Shaman off healing though is like Ellie Shaman doesn't have to give up any damage for it, but if Rep Pally wants to off heal, they have to give up a lot of their damage.
But at the same time, Ellie Shamans can't consistently do that. Like how they just have that one.
That's true because it's on a cooldown. Yeah,
and then whereas Ellie Shaman is like, or Red Paladin's like oh crap, we're struggling really hard here.
Yeah, like if you tell a Red Paladin for the next minute to heal. They can, whereas
like,
the Ellie Shaman is like casting 3 healing surges and then they're done.
Yeah, I mean, they can, but
they go.
Even then, the healing surges are so weak compared to whatever Red has to bring. They're like sort of like boomkins to me. That's how I see it.
I'm down for S here. You've definitely convinced me, Dorky. Shadow Priest is the next one we've got on the list here. This is also a hybrid spec. It has Vampiric Embrace if we're talking about a little bit of off healing. It has Mass Dispel. It has Offensive Purge. It has does it have diseases?
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. It has a couple of defensives. Not very much. Really got Dispersion. You got Fade.
Not much.
You got
Mind Soothe.
Oh yeah, Mind Soothe has been very good this expansion.
Yeah, Mind Control too.
Yeah, MC, especially Necrotic Wake. That being said, at least my gut when looking at Shadow was thinking that it was going to land in one of the lower tiers compared to these other classes.
Yeah, because one big reason is because their kick is the worst in the game, and I feel like it's such a liability that you got to take it down a notch from whatever it's supposed to be.
Also, a lot of those things that you were mentioning are kind of like they're just kind of weak. I don't know. They're either generic or weak. Like Vampiric Embrace is so bad. I don't know. Yeah. It does like no healing.
I'm down for C here as well. Okay. Last spec for our DPS spec tier list. We have Windwalker Monk. This is, I think, so we've got what? We got Mystic Touch. We got AoE Stun. We got Rop. I think Rop has to be the hero of the show, right?
I would argue Monk is S tier for
I want to put him S too.
For a lot of reasons. Like, one would definitely be unkillable. Like Dorky said, they just have so many defensives at their
it's interesting because like Windwalker is unkillable if they are being piloted correctly, right? But then like the problem with Windwalker is you do need to use 100% of your brain in order to avoid
they're only
dying
because they're standing in things, though.
Right, but like it's
for any class.
Well, you have a damage button that roots you. You got a whirly dragon punch.
Know, but I guess there's like thought required behind it. But I mean, that's
I think we have to go under. Yeah, I think we have to like assume
perfect play.
The specs are not necessarily perfect, but good play. Like we have to assume that they're being piloted well.
Fire mages are the real suspects, man. These guys like very, very combusting and they can't stand still. Or they're standing in crap and they're in their rune and stuff. I feel like that's worse than Windwalker. They just have a cheat death. But
let's not
talk about that yet.
I'm very excited to see all of the specs that played Dreamweaver throughout this expansion suddenly lose their cheat death.
That's a big one.
So true. Yeah, there weren't that many Dreamweavers in M+, right? It's like what, Warlocks?
Mages were.
Oh yeah, mages were for a while. Yeah.
Season.
Yeah. All right. I'm happy putting Windwalker up here, up in the S tier. I will caveat it, and I'll say like the difference between like a 99th percentile Windwalker's survivability and like a 60th percentile Windwalker survivability is so huge that I feel like if you were rating based off of that, you would want to knock them down a tier or two because they would be so many of your deaths in a high key. But
I would also argue that their utility is similar. ROP can be one of the best utility buttons in the world if used well, and if used poorly, it can be one of the worst. So I'd argue that a lot of their kit is kind of like that.
Yeah, I think this is the spec I would say is most like the difference between a good Windwalker and a bad Windwalker is going to be the most extreme of the specs that we have up here. All right. I believe that's a wrap on our DPS specs tier list. Hope you all enjoyed watching this. I actually had a lot of fun thinking about this. It's kind of interesting to rate things on this because it's like you're trying to not factor in how good things currently are, and so we see a lot of specs that are seeing no play that we got to talk about, and a lot of specs that are seeing some play that we got to put down a few tiers. But definitely let us know in the comments what you think about this, and if you're interested in us doing something like this for healers or tanks as well, and we can maybe make that happen. Till then, though, that's going to be it for this one. Later, gamers.